Okie, and good morning. I'd first like to acknowledge that we're on Blackfoot land, and I want to give recognition to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future. On behalf of the entire Lethbridge City Council, I want to thank you for inviting me here today. I'm excited to share the success of the last year and give some insight into what we see on the horizon in the coming year and beyond. We do have Councillors Blaine Hagan and Rob Miyashiro here with us today. This is our city motto, ad occasionis januum. I just butchered the Latin. But anyways, my Latin's a little rusty, but what that motto means is gateway to opportunity, or what it means to me is opportunity for all. And by opportunity for all, I mean basically the refugees who come to our city, those who've lived in our city, and also those in the First Nations. So some of our successes in the last year of how we have dealt with those issues. So we've had significant economic successes, and we've had some significant social successes. In August of 1963, Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream where all people are equal. All people have equal opportunity to housing, to employment, to education." And for the last 37, 14, 17, for the last 54 years, we really haven't realized that dream. And there are people in our community that don't have equal access to housing, equal access to employment, and equal access to education. But we are making progress. So I think our motto is as fitting today for our city as it was in 1963 when Martin Luther King gave his famous speech, or more than 100 years ago when it was developed for our city. 2017 was a significant year for Lethbridge and saw us take major steps on a number of fronts. Some of these accomplishments exemplified the teamwork and collaboration that Lethbridge is known for. So working together as a community, we have achieved several successes. Over the course of the year, we made rapid progress addressing some unprecedented social issues in our city. So 2 years ago, we never saw this drug crisis coming. But we are probably, as a municipality, making more progress than any other municipality in the province. The year began with our mission to Asia, and the delegation from Lethbridge went to China and Japan. And the fruits from that trip have been several return visits by Asian businessmen to the city of Lethbridge looking for opportunities to invest in Lethbridge and the area. And also, the trip was valuable in terms of meeting up with the Japanese imperial family and inviting a member of the Japanese imperial family to the 50th anniversary of Nikkyuko Japanese Gardens. And of course, we had Princess Takamoto come and attend the event. So that was very successful from that perspective, from both business and educational connections. We had business and education people on the tour, promoting exchanges of students and also business collaborations. Next, the Leaders Coalition on Opioid Use was formed actually in November of 2016. I formed this group with 16 organizations in the city of Lethbridge, and a little bit unprecedented. I'd learned from the Syrian Refugee Committee, bringing in organizations together and working on issues together was a very successful approach. And we built relationships with Alberta Health Services, and normally they are a standalone organization, but they became active in the opioid issues, and that gave us a heads up over most communities. Working together with Alberta Health Services and 15 other community organizations, we were able to move forward and make significant progress on developing a detox center, which will be open later this year. We got approval for the safe consumption site, one of 3 in Alberta. So Calgary has one, Edmonton has one, and we have approval for ours. So it should be opening either earlier this month or next month, and we're hoping that that's going to benefit the community. The number one concern we heard from people in Lethbridge last year on social media was, what are you going to do about the drug problem? Or, you're not doing anything about the drug problem. In fact, we funded a group, the Diversion Outreach Team, to support the police in going out and addressing social issues. We also ensured through Arches that there was a needle drop-off program that was implemented towards the end of the year, and of course took leadership on addressing this drug issue that didn't exist 2 years ago. And going down to Ottawa last June and talking with the Department of Health was certainly instrumental, telling them that the drug issues are not associated with large cities only, that cities like Lethbridge were facing this as a significant problem. And that was certainly a factor in us getting funded for the safe consumption site. It's an incredibly important announcement for the City of Lethbridge because it will save lives. We expect the facility to be open early this year on 1st Avenue South, and we're hoping that one of the tangible benefits you will see as business people and everyday citizens is a noticeable reduction in public drug use and public needle debris. So we've heard from businesses like Lethbridge Centre saying they can't handle it, downtown businesses saying they can't handle it. We've heard from people accessing community facilities saying they don't want their children exposed to it. And we are trying to do everything we can, even though it's not normally a municipal responsibility, to make sure that our city is a safe city and one where we take those type of issues seriously, and we don't wait for other orders of government to solve the problem for us. We had great support from the provincial government and great support from the federal government in making the progress we have done to date. We had a first meeting with council to council with the Kainai Council, which was tremendous, and we developed a tremendous relationship with our urban Indigenous community. That resulted in Reconciliation Week in September, and we were able to be one of the first communities in Canada to have a response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And that's not just the City Council's response, that's really a city response. So there's detailed response to the Truth and Reconciliation for the whole community, educational aspects, business aspects. Basically, it's about fairness and, again, addressing equal access to housing, employment, addressing the fact that there is discrimination, and we have to move forward and make sure that our community is accepting and providing opportunities for everyone that lives here. In Reconciliation Week, we welcomed the chiefs and other members of the Blackfoot Nations from across southern Alberta to raise the Blackfoot Confederacy flag at City Hall, and we also developed a reconciliation flag. We're serious about it. That committee continues to meet, and we're going to be responding in detail to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission following the 10-year plan that's been developed with our Indigenous people here who live here in the city. The next significant thing, of course, was the city manager's retirement. So that, for a city council, is quite a significant event. I know the Chamber's taken a keen interest in the retirement of Garth Sherwin as our city manager and the process of selecting his successors. We hired an experienced person in Kathy Hopkins, who had worked for the city for more than 30 years in the city manager's office, to be the interim city manager, because we don't want to rush into appointing someone. We want to have a very deliberate process. We want to maximize the number of candidates. We want to have a very talented pool to draw from and select the best person to provide leadership to our organization. So we did provide interested citizens and organizations like yours the opportunity to offer input yesterday, and you can still have input until the end of this week. The council will consider what traits would you like to see in an ideal city manager, and make sure that we get that input so we can include that in when we review those traits together as a council. So it is a comprehensive process, and we hope to make a selection by late May or late April or early May. In the fall, in October, we had the municipal election, of course. We welcomed 2 new members of council, Mark Campbell and Belinda Croson. And we began meeting early this year to develop the strategic plan. So right now, the strategic plan, council will get together in the 3rd week of February. So we'll be looking for input from the community on what the priorities should be for the city of Lethbridge. We've been very focused on our last 4-year strategic plan, and we had a very productive term of council. There were a lot of accomplishments, both economic and social, in the last term of council, and we want to continue continue to follow a strong plan to make sure that everyone feels involved in the success of the City of Lethbridge. And we require working with our community to make sure that we are successful, whether it be our seniors, whether it be our immigrants, whether our educational institutions. One of the strengths of the City of Lethbridge is the way we all communicate, the way we all collaborate. If I need to get a group together like the Coalition on Opioids, I can call together different organizations and have the best experts in the city to deal with that issue. Same with economic development issues, and we have EDL, Economic Development Lethbridge. As other issues come forward, we work together as a community to collaborate. We have the expertise here, right here in the city, right here in this room, in many cases, to make sure that we can achieve our goals together. So we did some, we saw some significant work get underway on some major municipal projects. We saw significant federal infrastructure investment in the city. We had $17 million in federal grants last year, which assists with taxation. And we had over $20 million in provincial funding, which assists with taxation. And we wanted to make sure that our infrastructure continues to keep pace with the growth of our city. We are incurring some significant debt these days, and people don't know, they think some of the infrastructure that takes place happens for nothing. So we're building a $155 million leisure center. The ice center is open next year. The rest of the leisure center will be open, but of course we will be incurring debt. You shouldn't panic about that. That's already included in the taxes that we forecast. And more than 1.5% of the taxes or increases that are happening are due to the fact we've factored in the debt. But we have to pay for these things. And before we incur more debt on more projects, we have to make sure that there's a method of payment. So I'll get to that later. Last year, we did review the capital plan, and we established our priorities for capital projects for the next 10 years, and we funded projects for the next 4 years. We brought forward projects like Whoop Up Drive and Twinning Métis Trail, 5 years ahead of schedule. And we need to make sure that we do keep up with that growth in the west side, which is growing twice as quickly as the rest of the city. But we also need to maintain balance, make sure that there's significant growth and opportunities available in South Lethbridge and in North Lethbridge as well. According to our 2017 census, West Lethbridge continues to be the fastest growing area of the city, and bringing forward those projects by 5 years was essential. The traffic congestion that was happening was significant. Construction began in April on those 2 arterial road projects, and certainly it's timely that they were done in 2017, and they'll be completed in 2018. So they're enhancing the access to residential areas, schools, and the major commercial core that's developing at the crossings. The ATB Center Phase 2, the construction of ATB Center Phase 2 is on budget, on time, and will open in the spring of 2019. It's one of the most exciting projects in the history of our city. When Phase 2 of this leisure center complex opens, it's going to be a destination for residents of Lethbridge, as well as our region, and I expect it will draw visitors from around Alberta and southeastern BC. We did approve the 10-year CIP. The projects funded in the first 4 years of this plan demonstrate strong focus that Council has put on maintaining our existing assets and ensuring the safety of our residents. Some of the significant projects in the next 4 years include a new West Lethbridge fire station. So we have right now about more than 40,000 residents living in West Lethbridge with 1 fire hall, and almost 60,000 people living on the east side of the river with 3 fire halls. And we're concerned about maintaining equal levels of service and availability on both sides of the river. We funded an expansion of the Southern Alberta Art Gallery to be investing in the vibrancy of our downtown, and to expand the art gallery is a relatively small investment, about $3 million, but certainly will make it a more pleasant and welcoming center than it is currently. We funded the planning and the design of a performing arts center, and so it was about a little over $5 million for the planning and the design, but the total cost of that project is $75 million, and right now we don't have the funding to do that, but we'll get the plans in place. We also funded the detailed design of the Exhibition Park and Trade Convention Center in Agriplex, partial funding, and so there'll be more news on that shortly, but certainly we don't have the funding for that either, unless it's going to come through taxes or grants. And the twinning of the south end of University Drive West was also funded and is in the plan. So University Drive on the west side, again, funding growth on the west side of Lethbridge. So we are seeking external funding to relieve the tax pressure on the citizens of Lethbridge. Last summer, the federal government committed $11.2 million as part of that $17 million I'd mentioned towards the $22 million cost of expanding water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure in the Sharing Industrial Park. And that's going to allow us to continue to attract new industrial investors to the city of Lethbridge. The funding support will help provide for the creation of jobs and economic diversification in our city and in our region. Of course, leading the way, and we're excited about the $350 million investment by Cavendish Farms, which broke ground in 2017. It's currently on track, and we will have a new state-of-the-art frozen potato processing plant up and running in 2019. We want to pursue steady, sustainable growth, and that's what our city's been known for. In terms of new construction, Lethbridge continues to have a very steady, sustainable growth. The construction value of building permits in Lethbridge last year was down slightly from 2016, but was still more than double what they saw in other mid-sized cities in our province. Much like we saw in 2016, the investments in 2017 were almost evenly balanced between the private sector and the public sectors, which is healthy for our economy. This means companies are continuing to choose Lethbridge as a place they want to be, because Lethbridge is an excellent place to operate a business and offers their employees an attractive quality of life. With a population of more than 98,000, Lethbridge has grown by more than 15,000 in the past decade. That's 18%. And using that math, we'll be at 115,000 in another 10 years. But we're still just 2% of Alberta's population. In 2016, Lethbridge witnessed the fastest annual population growth of any Alberta city that conducts an annual census. 2.1% in Lethbridge versus 0.4% in Calgary, and a 1% reduction in population in Red Deer. Economic development. A big part of planning our growth is economic development. I'd like to thank Economic Development Lethbridge for the work that they're doing to support existing businesses, grow new businesses, and attract new businesses to our city. They work hard to gather data, like the statistics I'm about to share with you today, research and provide analysis that helps us continue to develop our local economy. As a city, we always have to provide a high level of service and support to investors to continue to attract them to the city of Lethbridge. The number of new business licenses issued in Lethbridge remained steady in 2017, another healthy sign of growth for our city. We had 341 new business licenses up to the end of November, so we expect the year-end number to be very close to 2016. From the chart here, you can see that even during economic downturns that hit the rest of Alberta fairly hard from 2008 and 2014, Lethbridge growth remained relatively steady. Our unemployment numbers are among the best in the province and are 2% below the provincial average. Here's another look at unemployment numbers going back to late 2016. As you can see, Other Alberta cities had significantly higher unemployment over that period, and more recent trend points to the economy recovering across the province. I think there's an even brighter story here, because the numbers for Southern Alberta are linked with also Medicine Hat, and I think our unemployment numbers were even significantly lower than Medicine Hat's. So, what does it take to operate the city on a day-to-day basis? As we look at the top operating costs, the bulk goes towards the essential services we need to be a safe, vibrant, and healthy place to live. 23% goes to protective services, that's police, fire, and ambulance. 19% goes to infrastructure and transportation services, maintaining roads, building roads. 18% to leisure and human services, that's basically quality of life. 17% to electric and other utilities. These four areas comprise about 77% of our annual operating budget. So where does the revenue come from to fund the operating budget? It might surprise you to learn 40% comes from the sales of goods and services, including utility service charges and user fees for things like recreation and culture facilities. 30% comes from the municipal tax portion that you pay, the property taxes and other municipal levies. And 12% comes from provincial and federal grants, and we have to keep that level up. And you can see from the rest of the breakdown in the chart, the other numbers are quite small, 8% and less. Let's look broadly at where your property tax dollars go each year. Off the top, about 24% goes to the provincial government for education and 1% to Green Acres for seniors housing. That leaves 75 cents of every dollar you pay in property taxes going to the City of Lethbridge to support city operations. Here's a more detailed illustration to break down what the municipal portion of your tax bill paid for last year. Again, you'll see the largest percentages going towards our vital emergency services. So this is tax funded only, without utilities included. So police represent 22% of the municipal budget. Fire and ambulance represent 15%. And then we can see 6% to streets and roads. We can see 20% to community services, 8% to transit and accessoride, 6% to corporate services, and 9% goes to debt payments. We have excellent resources on the city website that provide additional detail and that are really easy to understand. We certainly can, there's lots of questions about taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes. The difference is for a municipality, we really have one form of tax, the municipal property tax. It doesn't necessarily go up with inflation. Property values could stay stagnant for years. So when people see their property tax assessments go up and their taxes go up, and they get that big bill every June, they're certainly concerned about it, where provincial and federal taxes go up automatically with inflation. But certainly just visit lethbridge.ca and search for city finances to get more detail, and certainly you can ask myself or any member of council. Be happy to come back and talk specifically about taxes at any time to the chamber and its members. We often get asked about taxes, and some residents have the impression that Lethbridge has higher taxes than other cities in Alberta and Canada. So here's a slide you might find interesting. It shows a comparison of Canadian cities for total taxes per person, both business and residential. As you may be aware, Lethbridge does not have a business tax. Well, a city like Calgary does. By combining residential and business taxes, we get a more accurate comparison of the total tax dollars being collected by each city per person. And you can see that Lethbridge is very competitive with other cities in terms of overall property taxes. Cities have two assessment bases from which they draw taxes to help fund their annual operating budgets: residential and non-residential. When residents ask me why residential taxes in Lethbridge aren't lower, I point to this comparison. In Lethbridge, versus other cities, our commercial tax assessment base makes up a smaller proportion of our overall property tax base than other mid-size and major Alberta cities. Most are around 25%. So business property assessment values are around 25%. In Lethbridge, it's 19%. That's significant. And you can see the reverse. Basically, what's happening is we need to attract more economic development to our city in order to lower taxes. So we need more business investment. We, in fact, in total, lag the province, but we need to continue to invest in the city, attract investors to our city in order to lower the overall tax burden. So we do want to gradually increase our proportion of commercial tax or non-residential tax base, which will allow us to shift some of the tax burden from the residential taxpayers through growth. This slide gives you an idea of how Lethbridge stacks up in terms of total assessment value of commercial property versus the other cities, big and small. So again, I think it helps illustrate that by attracting new businesses and supporting the growth of existing businesses, we can increase our commercial assessment base and provide a better balance between residential and non-residential property taxes. So the truth of the matter is, in the current state of affairs, residential taxpayers subsidize non-residential taxpayers to some extent. So you're going to find residential taxes in Lethbridge will tend to be a little bit higher than those in other cities. But on the other hand, if we increase the taxes on the non-residential component, we're going to inhibit economic growth and investment. I'm sure as business people, this chart will be of particular interest to you. It compares the overall commercial to residential tax rates and the ratio for Lethbridge versus other Alberta cities. So you can see now what we're talking about is the mill rate. So the mill rate for non-residential taxpayers is more than twice what it is for residential taxpayers. That's standard across the province. But we're firmly in the middle. And you can see there's other cities like Calgary and Edmonton have not only a business tax, but they have higher rates of taxation as well in terms of the mill rate versus the for non-residential taxpayers. As you can see, we're in the middle of the pack, with Calgary and Edmonton at the high end and Grand Prairie, not surprisingly, at the low end because they have a much higher non-residential tax base versus residential tax base. The commercial to residential tax ratio in Lethbridge has trended downward over the last 10 years and has kind of leveled off in the last couple of years. So again, more non-residential investment, more business investment, industrial, and will help us lower that ratio. The total column on the right factors in the provincial education and Green Acres portion of the overall tax bill, and the municipal column reflects only the municipal tax portion of the overall bill. I know many of you would like to see that ratio even lower, and I'm hopeful as we continue to attract new business investment and grow our commercial assessment base, we can see that ratio edge down over time. Sometimes I get asked about the city's involvement in land development. The city certainly has a limited role that ultimately benefits the entire community. Over the past 10 years, the city's market share of serviced residential land sold is 8%. It's worth noting that other cities are also involved in land development. According to the most recent numbers we have, the City of Lethbridge, the City of Medicine Hat has 90% market share in their land development market. Saskatoon has a 50% market share. Red Deer has a 35% market share. In smaller communities like Nobleford and Nanton, of course, the municipalities are the only players in land development. The city's land development is self-funded, and the profits it generates are invested to help pay for capital projects, offsetting the need to fund these projects through increased taxation. That's a win for all of us. The city's dollars often help leverage substantial grants from other levels of government. So we have a number of projects that are funded through the land sales. So you'll see our major parks. We're building a third major urban park. Legacy Park will open in North Lethbridge in about May 1st of this year. Around our schools, you'll notice the high schools in West Lethbridge, there's lots of park area around those schools. They're funded through the land sale department. Most of our public and separate schools have great play areas around the school. They're funded by the city. And of course, those areas, by locating schools in residential neighborhoods, attracts housing, attracts investment, and spurs sales. So there's an economic development benefit that comes back to the city. As we move forward, the priorities for our city for 2018, now we haven't done our strategic planning process yet, but some are obvious from the beginning. The city manager search process, getting the strategic plan done, the 2019 to 22 operating budget deliberations, so those will happen in the fall of this year. And of course, when you want to know what's important at the city or in any organization, follow the money. So you will want to have input into the operating budget as we move forward in the fall. Advocating for the continuation of MSI, Municipal Sustainability Funding. So every once in a while an issue comes up that's really important to the City of Lethbridge. One of our challenges from a tax point of view is the fact that we have a high proportion of government-owned buildings in the city, and that we're a regional hub. And really, they pay no taxes. So whether it's the college or the university, wonderful assets in our city that provide educational opportunities. But of course, they take up a lot of real estate. We have to provide roads to them. We have to provide sidewalks. We provide all other facilities to them, but they don't contribute to the tax base. 4 years ago, the government of the day chose to exempt retirement facilities from taxation. So the city would no longer get grants in lieu for retirement facilities. That cost the City of Lethbridge $1 million in tax revenue, and again, that has to be made up by existing taxpayers. The next challenge for us is MSI funding, which is Municipal Sustainability Initiative funding, capital funding. Each year, the City of Lethbridge and all other municipalities get funded on a per capita basis from the province. That capital funding we accumulate to build projects like a performing arts center, like a convention center. At the moment, there is question whether that MSI funding will continue. If it discontinues, the burden falls to Lethbridge taxpayers. You'll have some opportunities in the next week to talk with the provincial treasurer when he comes to discuss issues that are important to the City of Lethbridge. And if you don't tell them how important the MSI funding is to the City of Lethbridge and all other communities, we'll be missing a big opportunity. I'm pretty sure they won't listen to the City of Lethbridge by ourselves or other municipalities by ourselves. When there's opportunities to cut funding at other government levels, usually they protect health and education, and municipalities become the victims. And all that does is delay investment. It causes a halt in confidence. When money comes to us on a per capita basis, we can spend the money appropriately on our priorities, and we can spend the money expediently. When you're always waiting for a handout, that means delays. So the MSI funding is the #1 provincial priority for the City of Lethbridge. City manager process, as you well know, the City Council is in the process of searching for a new city manager. Some of you may have attended the Special Community Issues meeting yesterday, where we invited interested people to offer their input, and you have until this Friday to make a submission. We're engaging a recruitment firm, and we expect to name that person later in the spring. The strategic plan, council members will also be meeting in the 3rd week of February to begin developing our strategic plan for our 4-year term. And the purpose of that strategic plan is to establish priorities that will guide council's decision-making and set clear direction for our municipal organization over the next 4 years. So we'll continue to do that. There will be an opportunity for each of us on council to articulate issues, concerns, and values. So contact your council members with your issues, and we can advocate for you as we develop that. We'd like your input on what you see as priorities from a business perspective and from an individual perspective. And the operating budget is going to be key in the fall as well. Approving those, basically the operating budget will fund the strategic plan. So anything that we can't fund through existing taxation, existing service levels would have to be generate tax increases. A 1% tax increase generates $1.3 million in additional revenue, or can fund a $1.3 million payment on a debt. We want to be careful before we spend more money. You have to recognize a significant portion of our budget is based on human services or human resources. So whether it's police, whether it's fire, city staff. So there's significant commitments in terms of collective agreements as well. So very difficult to manage. One area of pressure for our next budget is the loss of grants in lieu of those taxes, as I mentioned, and also the possible loss of MSI. Taxation can be used to create borrowing capacity, and so that $1.3 million in payments would create $15 million in borrowing capacity. So with that desire for new facilities in our community, we have to recognize there's a cost. So we get lots of letters of support for Performing Arts Center from people. We get lots of letters of support from a convention center, but you do have to recognize that going forward, there would be an impact on taxes. And we have to make sure that those are funded as we complete them. We are just completing that major project on the west side. So that ATB Leisure Center, taking on another project right away is going to have an impact on taxes. So I think I've talked about the MSI. So far on MSI, the province hasn't said no for continuing MSI, but they also haven't said yes. And what they do in the next budget and what their plan is going to be very important, and it'll be a major issue, I think, for municipalities, how we will be funded going forward over the next few years. So, I think I've covered off the priorities. I'm excited about the future for our city. There are many exciting things on the horizon for the City of Lethbridge. The city's in the midst of expanding the sharing industrial park to ensure we can accommodate growth in the coming decade, and the groundwork that's happening today will culminate in a number of growth initiatives that will create new jobs in our community in 2019. So we do have Cavendish Farms opening their frozen potato processing facility. And the best thing we can do is provide a high level of service to Cavendish and the Irving Group. They're building basically on 80 plus acres of the 288 acres that they purchased. And what we want them to do is be thinking about Lethbridge as a great place to continue investing. They have 17 consumer divisions, and they have multi-facets. We now are the western base for the Irving Group, and we want them to continue investing in the City of Lethbridge. The destination project at the U of L will be complete and will be open in 2019. The ATB Leisure Center will be complete and open in the spring of 2019. And 2 new agri-food facilities will open in the Sharing Industrial Park in addition to Cavendish. Collectively, these initiatives will result in about 500 new jobs right here in our city. The recent announcement that WestJet will be introducing daily flights to Lethbridge in March of 2018 is incredibly positive news, but also fragile news, because it's so important that our communities support competition and use the airport. We have about 80,000 flights where people drive from Lethbridge to Calgary every year. and get on a plane. And if we continue bypassing the Lethbridge Airport, we will lose WestJet, and we may possibly lose Air Canada. The important thing to do now is to support all three airlines, including Integra. We have to make the Lethbridge Airport an asset and not a liability. So we need to talk to the county about how we can invest in the airport. We need to explore what government grants can be applied for. Red Deer got $6 million from the provincial government to enhance their airport. City of Medicine Hat got $14 million from the federal government to enhance their airport. And by not working together, we're missing opportunities to invest in our airport, and we need to figure out how to solve that problem. The airport is an important economic asset for Lethbridge and our surrounding region. We would be much poorer for it if basically airport service closed. If we were a city without airport service, that would be a significant challenge for the city of Lethbridge. So we will work with the county, who own the airport, for ways to maintain its viability, enhance its functionality for airlines and passengers, and find a way forward so we can apply for external funding that other cities are receiving for airport services. Determining an airport governance structure is a critical factor in accessing that grant money to enhance the airport. So that's something we are working very hard on with our friends at Lethbridge County. We've made excellent progress in the past year in establishing the Lethbridge Destination Management Organization as a new single entity to promote tourism in Lethbridge. And I'm very pleased to be able to introduce the person recently hired to serve as our organization's executive director. William Slenders, could you please stand up? Well, please welcome William to Lethbridge. I'd like to remind you that the tourist attractions in the city of Lethbridge are all government-owned. When I go into the United States and I travel over going to the Sun Road and head to Whitefish, I see a lot of private investment and tourist attractions. I don't see that here in the city of Lethbridge. And I wonder why that is. We have a market 2 hours drive from here of 1.3 million people. And we don't do much to try and entice them to come here. That is a great economic development opportunity, and we need to think, what can we do to entice people from Calgary to come to Lethbridge, to spend money in our restaurants, stay in our hotels, and visit our attractions. But we need more private investment to make that happen. There are lots of other positives to look forward to. As we complete the construction of Métis Trail and the twinning of Whoop-Up Drive, there are improving connectivity for new residential developments in West Lethbridge. This spring we'll be putting the finishing touches on Legacy Park, which will attract development in North Lethbridge. And there will be a new area structure plan and a new school in place in Southeast Lethbridge to encourage development and construction in that area of the city. Let's look at Lethbridge's competitive advantage. Why Lethbridge? When you compare the cost of land and development along with the cost of living for employees, Lethbridge is very competitive, and it is a great place to invest. So here we are, Lethbridge versus Calgary. Look at the price of land. Attracting businesses to Lethbridge, we should always be not afraid to compete with Calgary. When you look at the price of homes, Lethbridge is a great place in terms of affordable housing. I think Economic Development Lethbridge a few years ago was onto something really good. They would run ads in Calgary on the radio at rush hour saying, if you lived in Lethbridge, you'd be home now. In the midst of this, we see competition on the landscape, and we see that competition changing. It looks like Calgary's trying to step up their game in terms of economic development outside the oil and gas sector. Calgary City Council recently increased their economic development investment fund to $100 million to enhance their ability to attract and retain companies and support catalytic investments in the city of Calgary and in their economy. We don't have a fund, we do have Economic Development Lethbridge. When you look at this slide, it might be hard to read some of it because we've got two slides together. But on the right, the yellow one with the dollar signs, this is from the City of Calgary Economic Development website. It says, with $14.5 billion in sales in 2016, food manufacturing has overtaken refined petroleum as the largest manufacturing sector in Alberta. So Calgary's aware, and they're trying to diversify their economy, and on their economic development website, they're promoting agricultural diversification as one of their strengths. That's who we are. Alberta exports primary and processed agricultural food products to over 150 countries, mostly from southern Alberta. Food processing capacity. Food manufacturing is the largest manufacturing sector in Alberta today. That's who we are. In 2016, Alberta's food manufacturing sales were 23% of total manufacturing sales in the province. So I want to show you Calgary's latest, newest economic development video. Basically, Calgary's a global leader in smart and sustainable agriculture. Well, that's news to me. 1/3 of Canada's total farmland. That's true, it's Alberta, not Calgary. Alberta has 67% of Canada's total irrigated land area. That sounds like southern Alberta. 41% of Canada's total cattle inventory. That's southern Alberta. 15+ agriculture and innovative organizations. We have the largest research station in Canada in Lethbridge. Agri-food is the largest manufacturing sector, employing over 26,000 Albertans. It's a great video. It'd be much better with sound. I'm sorry about that. But basically, we have competition. We need to make sure that we continue to advocate together. The most important thing we can do is be a team seeking investment. We need to advocate for our city and talk about our educational institutions, about the 20+ international businesses that already exist in Lethbridge and area that are in agricultural processing. The cost of land is a lot cheaper in Lethbridge. The quality of life is a lot cheaper in Lethbridge. We need to promote. As a city, you all need to be on the team. We need to be advocating for Lethbridge as a great place to live, learn, work, and invest. So what I wanted to tell you today is we are achieving our economic goals and we are achieving our social goals. We want to promote inclusiveness, we want to promote wealth for all, and we want to have equal opportunity for all. We want to live the City of Lethbridge's motto. So I hope that this has been informative to you. I'm certainly open to questions, but certainly a very positive future. We've had a great past, and we're going to continue to build on our assets and work together as a community.